Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast. The Mental Health Show with Mark Aiston.
In normal circumstances, when we're not in social distancing laws, I am a keynote speaker.
Yep.
And I do workplace training in organisations. But I suppose right now I like to say that I'm on a crusade to support organisations and their people to build their resilience so they can navigate through these very stressful and uncertain times.
Yeah, and as stressful and uncertain, as horrible as they are, this is when people need to step up in that area, don't they? In terms of CEOs, general managers, people who run businesses, they need to step up and make sure that they do something about building the resilience of their business.
Oh, without doubt. And they have a great responsibility, really, to do that, and an opportunity. Yes. Yeah,
they do, absolutely. Perhaps an unusual, out of left field question. If you go into an organisation and you're going in to work for them and to build their resilience, what sorts of triggers, what sorts of light bulb moments occur in your head or in your mind that suggest to you that, no, things aren't well in this organisation?
Well, I always ask to look at the data because we know that the numbers don't lie. So we'll look at things like their absentee rate to see if that's changed. We'll look at their attraction, like how long does it take for them to attract the most talented people within their industry? Because if they've got a workplace that is resilient and thriving, then people will jump at the chance to work there. But if they're really struggling to find anyone to fill spots, then we know that there's something not quite right.
Yeah, something's up, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a really good point. And just as you're saying that, it sort of sparked a bit of an idea in my head. The difference between resilience and culture. I mean, I know there is a difference, but is there? But is there a connection as well?
Oh, definitely. I mean, if you have a great culture, what we like to call a thriving culture, I suppose these days, that is really building the resilience of your organisation. And, you know, if a culture is at the heart of so much of that, but it's not the only thing. So there is certainly a connection.
Yeah. When you get a call from a company or a business and they say, we'd like to have you in to have a look at things, do those people who ring you generally say, you know, we have issues here, or are they a bit embarrassed to do that and they just sort of, they want you to sort of ask those questions and find out those things along the journey?
Yeah, what usually happens is they've perhaps seen me at a conference talking about these topics. They like to then perhaps bring me in to do resilience training for the people within their organisation. But what I always want to dive a little deeper with is, it's one thing to build the resilience of the people, but what are you doing as an organisation that requires them to be more resilient?
Yeah, great point. That's a great point, yeah.
So this has to come from top down and bottom up. It has to be a collective, a holistic approach to this whole topic.
I love it. That is so true. And I guess some of the roadblocks that you'd come up against would be managers who are living in the past, or they're just not good at their job, or they don't see these things.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's just that awareness, really, like with all things. You've got to have some kind of awareness that things are a little bit off balance, not quite right. And I mean, we often see organisations that, you know, they start losing their best people, they're wasting hard-earned revenue, they're damaging their brand, they're missing profitable opportunities. all these things are indicators that things are not right. So if we can kind of build the strength of the resilience of that organisation, we can turn all that around.
And look, I worked at Channel 10 for 40 years as 25 years as a sports presenter, and before that at the ABC, and I've worked for Nova Entertainment, as a radio host for a number of years. So, and I've worked in other major organisations, not a lot of them. They were the two main ones, but I have noticed that when consultants like yourself come in, there's a certain sheepishness sometimes when things are being spoken about in front of everyone, when the managers or the CEO or the general managers or the unit managers are there, because they know that part of what you're saying is their responsibility, and those who work in that organisation understand that as well. How do you feel that, and B, how do you handle it, or do you just go through and do it, and you don't worry about it?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, every organisation is very different, and I suppose it's that whole ability to be able to understand personalities and how they're responding to this type of education and consultation, and whether they're open to the facts really about what's going on. So sometimes I have to be extremely delicate with how I approach it.
Diplomatic, yeah.
But I think, once someone has brought me in, even if they think that, we just want you to come in and build the resilience of the people, they have to have already had a little bit of an idea that other things can change. We can make this better. Yeah,
absolutely.
So there's a little bit of openness there, and it's my job to really find the triggers, understand the behaviours and reactions, so we can move the whole organisation forward. Yeah.
I want to get into the tough times you've had in your life and how that sort of moulded you into the person you are and doing what you're doing now, and obviously very, very passionate. I can hear that in your voice. But just before I do, can you just give us a snippet as to a bit of a takeaway as to something that you would be teaching a company or a business specifically in terms of resilience? Just a little gem.
For the organisation?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, to me it is finding the courage to put people before profits. That has to be the burning kind of desire behind it.
100%.
And once we know that an organisation is going to put their people first, we can definitely make headway.
Yeah, and that is a really, really good point, and not enough businesses and companies do it. And I had a phone call. I'll keep this brief, but about I went to rehab for 3 months, 13 months ago. Yeah. So I'm now 13 months clean, and I'm very proud of myself.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And about a week before I went into rehab, I was sending out posts on, and I have been for ages, on Facebook and LinkedIn about what I've been going through, but not oh woe is me, more sort of, hey, this is what I'm going through. Make sure that if you're going through something similar, you should see someone, because this is where you could end up. And then, of course, I ended up in rehab. But anyway, this guy rang me. He was from a real estate firm in Sydney, and he just rang me out of the blue. But he'd seen one of my videos, and he thought that I looked a bit jaded, and he felt that maybe I wasn't in a good place. We had a chat for 15 minutes. I was about to take my dog down to the park. We had a chat for 15, 20 minutes, and he was genuinely Heidi. He was really caring about me. But this is the point. He ran and you used the word earlier, he ran a very holistic-based real estate agency. And what he had done, and you'd know all about this. I mean, I've just learned a little bit about it. But he'd put profits down the bottom. So and right up the top, again, as you would know, it's the people. And if you look after the people, well, actually, that's not quite true. The person that was at the top of his chain was him. He had to look after himself first, so he could look after his people, which were next, and then there was and then there was profits. And his philosophy was, and again, I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but his philosophy was, look after yourself. That means you can look after your people. They'll look after your business, and you'll make money by default.
Absolutely.
It's so logical, isn't it? It's so logical.
It's so logical. Yeah.
Yeah, and
without doubt.
Yeah, and I think what disappoints me is that businesses and companies, more often than not, will say, "Oh, can you work an extra 2 days, or can you work an extra hour?" Now, in these circumstances, obviously that's gold for people. I understand that, but generally they will work people to the bone, and then what happens is when that person gets burnt out, then they just replace them. But what sort of philosophy and what sort of business are you running where you're just treating people as numbers rather than as actual people who you can, nurture and get you to help help you, I should say, get to where you want to go?
Oh, definitely. And I mean, the cost of replacing people from a financial point of view is huge, but you're also losing all that IP that you've been building over the years or the months or however long it is. And what a waste.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a bit like a footballer. You put a lot of work into a footballer, an AFL footballer, or, if you're in Sydney, an NRL player, and then all of a sudden they leave. Well, all of that IP and all of that effort you put into what you've been doing with that player's gone. Heidi, what about, just in a general sense, some of the tough times you went through? Do you feel comfortable just running through a couple of those and maybe, I guess, just explaining how those things have helped you now?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, Mark. And I suppose, all of this, I've been working for 20-something years on helping individuals and companies and teams to improve their physical and mental health so that they can actually perform better at work. But it was in August 2018 where I really felt that I could take it to a whole new level. And I was sitting in my backyard. It was the third year since I had survived a violent crime. And as those anniversaries bring up, lots of, where have I come from? How am I doing? How do I feel about it?
What if? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd moved on and I was doing all right. But what I realized was that I had all this rage still stuck in my gut. And in fact, still 9 months prior to that day, I'd had terrible pelvic pain and nausea that I often couldn't leave the house. I couldn't exercise. I wasn't socializing. It was just so bad. And everything kept coming back normal from my tests, so they decided to do some investigative surgery. And so the week before that day I'm talking about, they opened me up and found that I had stage 4 endometriosis, which is the worst, on my bowel, my uterus, my ovaries, my rectum, my appendix. My appendix was so rotted, they had to remove it.
Oh, my God.
And I just knew that if I did not turn this rage into something a bit more positive, it was going to eat me from the inside out, which it had already started to do.
Do you feel as though part of that was the fact that there was just so much tension, so much anxiety, and, in other words, partly psychological?
Oh, of course. I couldn't let it go. The group who were involved were never brought to justice. I'd lost something really passionate to me, which was my not-for-profit working out of Vanuatu. I was doing literacy and girls empowerment programs there for 13 years, and I had to let all that go because of what happened, the PTSD, the crippling insomnia, pain from injuries. But it was all this kind of emotional stress and the betrayals that I felt that I was just hanging on to, and it was causing me a lot of illness.
Wow. I mean, it virtually drained you of your inner being, really, didn't it?
Yeah, and it did, and of my ability to actually do what I need to do in this world. And I suppose it was then and there that I decided to write that book. Her middle name is Courage.
Yeah.
How self-leadership transforms pressure into performance, chaos into clarity, and rage into resilience. And it's that rage into resilience which is about that particular story. And I just knew then that I had to bring all together everything I'd learned over the years and create a way forward for myself, and also show how, because I lost this organisation, I knew that I hadn't built it to be as resilient as it could be, so that it could survive some kind of crisis. And even though I built another organisation that was resilient enough, so I've kind of drawn all those lessons into what I now do to support organisations and their people.
Wow, that's just encapsulated it magnificently, and you sound determined. You sounded emotional when you were talking about what had happened to you in the past, but you sound determined, and it's a wonderful message for people, isn't it? I mean, that's not just about resilience. It's about, if you really want to break it down, I suppose, and I sort of partly went through this just in a minor way, and other people would have as well, but it's almost about letting go of the past, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's not an easy thing to do. It's easy to say it.
No.
It's easy to tell people to do it. But I guess if you can let go of the past, which clearly you've been able to do, how much power does that give you for now?
Oh, so much more. I mean, I think I heard someone once say that, like, when you're holding on to things like that, it's really like you're drinking the bottle of poison.
Absolutely.
It's just rotting you. It's not rotting anybody else.
Absolutely. It's not affecting anyone else at all. The only people it affects, I guess the only people it affects, Heidi, are those who you invite to your pity party if you want to talk down to yourself. That's all, and people get sick of that.
Oh, yeah, I've invited lots to that. Poor people.
Yeah, I know. If my best mate doesn't say to me once, if my best mate said to me, you've got to let go of the past, Mark, if he said that to me 100 times, then one of these days I'll actually do something about it. But this interview has actually given me a lot of motivation, and I hope it's given a lot of other people motivation. When did you write the book?
I started it that particular day, the 9th of August 2018.
Did you really?
And straight away. And I had it published it was March last year, so about 7 months later.
Wow. Where's it available?
Well, it's available on my website, HeidiDening.com.
See and listen to more now at thementalhealthshow.com. This podcast is part of the Ozcast Network. Ozcast.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.